Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Welcome to the final episode in our conversation with Courtney Markley. Today we turn inward. We're going to look at individuals with wealth and the things they deal with, but we're also going to look at the inner experience of fundraisers. Fundraisers often coach donors through emotional money issues. But what about our own? Courtney and I share personal stories of overcoming scarcity mindsets, moving from small asks to big gifts, and learning to serve from a place of integrity. If you've ever felt imposter syndrome or struggled to relate to wealthy donors, this episode is for you. Well, I'm eager to hear from you about, maybe a few stories you've had with clients where you've really been able to help them and transform the way they think about giving.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go back to the gentleman I mentioned to you earlier who grew up with a father who abused alcohol. He and his family, they're now millionaires. And there was a point in us working together where he was starting to really succumb to just very unhealthy emotional attachments to money, where he's constantly looking at his portfolio, seeing, every day, where am I at, right now, constantly looking at the news and all of these just different things, worrying, if this market hiccups, what's it going to do to my bottom line? All those kind of things. Started not sleeping very well. And all the while, this is a Christian couple. And so we got to have just a really, really genuine, it was a series of conversations. It was probably a year-long conversation that happened with this person who had just some really traumatic things happen in childhood, who grew an unhealthy attachment to their money, now had a good surplus of money, and they were feeling called to give it, but at the same time, they just couldn't, right? Like, just his hands were so tightly wrapped around this money. There was just a worry of like, but what if I don't have enough? What if I give it and I just don't have it for me when I need it? And so it was probably about a year-long process where we really started to unpack where those emotional attachments came from. And years later, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. They were about to retire. And we were having this conversation. Again, I know their advisor. I knew they're going to be meeting with him soon. And I'm like, he's going to ask you this and you need to have a plan. So tell me, what do you want to do in retirement? Because he'll start building out your financial plan based on these answers, right? And so they started to say, well, we don't really have a plan for retirement. We'll probably just, hang out on the couch and we're just going to relax, and kind of giving a very vague, generic answer, that everyone says, like, maybe I'll travel a little bit, maybe I'll spend more time with the kids, yada, yada. But they really had not given any thought to retirement at all. And so this is where the challenging comes in a little bit, but there is just this moment of looking at them both in the eye and saying, you realize that answer is not good enough. You need to give me a better response the next time we meet. Like, you have not been thinking about this at all. And going back to the values, this is the time in their life where they'll have more money and more time resources than ever before. And don't tell me you're just going to waste it away doing absolutely nothing. And so we talked just very, very boldly into this couple. And I can tell you now, years later, if we fast forward the clock, they have gone on 4 mission trips this year. They are the first ones to give whenever, they feel compelled, whenever there's an ask within their church. They're supporting multiple missionaries over when school started. he sent me a note saying, "Hey, we just walked around Walmart for the day asking to pay for family school supplies and praying for them." And I'm like, this is such a 180 because this person was nearly afraid to leave their home a few years ago. They had no plan for retirement, and now they're spending almost every waking hour and a lot of their income on just serving God's kingdom. And it's really, really cool to see. So that is one of the success stories I love to share with people because again, it took several years. It was not an overnight um, success story, but it was a daily struggle of them just, where is God calling me right now? How can I be faithful right now? And having someone in their corner, just always being willing to ask good questions and just lead them closer to the values that they held really dearly.
Wow, that's a great story. I mean, it sounds like this person was really held captive
Yeah.
by those traumatic experiences as a kid, and the counseling and the work put into kind of thinking through and praying through all those different types of issues really helped free that individual up to really live out their values in an amazing way. That is such a cool story, Courtney. I
Yeah.
see why you love your job.
I do. I think I have the best job in the world. So I would love more people to come join me. So consider this a recruiting call. No.
There you go. What
Yeah.
do you have any other encouraging stories from your work to share?
I could share all kinds of stories. Um, I'm trying to think which one to go to next.
A lot of
Um,
times when I talk with donors, the question I ask them is regardless of the size,
mhm.
what story is most meaningful to you? And you may have shared that one already, but
Yeah.
is there another one like that?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There are a whole lot. One that comes to mind. This happened just a few years ago. I was meeting with a young girl. She was about to leave. I won't give too many details
Mm,
because she's a missionary in a very sensitive part of the world. But she was about to leave to a very dangerous place to become a missionary. And she had been working as a missionary for a few years. And of course, they have to raise their funds, right? They
mm,
have to raise their funds every year. So she was kind of in that process. And in the midst of that, missionaries have an interesting challenge because they raise their funds for the year simply for them to live on. They don't raise extra money so that they can be putting some aside into a 401k or having extra reserves into savings or anything like that. Um, but so she's like, I'm kind of struggling because I'm young. I hear everyone else saying I'm supposed to be, saving X amount of dollars into retirement, and I should have this amount of money set aside in an emergency fund. And I'm not sure what to do because I am literally just earning what I'm spending every month, just to get me by. And then at the same time, in the midst of these conversations, a relative passed away and she received a $70,000 inheritance.
mm.
Now, logic, logic and reason says, well, here's the solution to your problem, right? This is what we've been talking about. You can put some aside for savings, you can put a huge sum into investments. And at the same time, she said, "I know, Courtney, that makes sense. That makes a lot of logical sense. But I am actually feeling a deep, deep pull from her spirit to give this money away,
Oh, wow.
to give it away." And so we spent a ton of time praying together. And essentially, what it came down to, she said, "I spend all of my time fundraising and I never get to support anyone else." She said, "This is my chance to truly put my money where my mouth is a bit." And she ended up giving away the money.
Hmm. Wow.
And
That's
after
a really
talking to
powerful
her,
story.
yeah, after talking to her years later, she is still completely at peace with that decision. And it was truly an act of sacrificial love and generosity because we could have absolutely made a case for why this young woman needed that money and why she could have kept it.
Yeah.
But she was walking in obedience to what she believed was right. And that was really encouraging to see her follow through on such a
Mm.
sacrificial gift. And so it was
Wow.
really a pleasure for me and convicting for me to be able to have just a front row seat to what God was doing in her life.
Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Fundraising can be hard work, and it can be hard to mentally get into the place you need to be in order to see new opportunities. Everyone struggles with it. We are like the fish in the fishbowl who just can't see the water they're swimming in. That's when having outside expertise comes in handy. For 25 years, I've been helping nonprofits analyze their challenges, discover new ways forward, and develop clear plans that lead to greater fundraising revenues. Now I am available to help your organization develop the abundant vision it needs to inspire new levels of philanthropy at your nonprofit as well. Check out abundantvision.net to start your journey toward greater fundraising success today. Now, back to the show. You're talking in that case about someone who is a fundraising professional. They raise money to support their salary. And it reminds me that fundraisers are bringing their own baggage to the table when they're trying to have these financial conversations. What are questions that fundraising professionals ought to be asking themselves that could help them work through some of the psychology of asking?
Oh, I love this question. I love where you're going because I do believe that we can't really take someone deeper than where we've got ourselves, right? It's
Right?
true. It's absolutely true. So I would encourage people, boy, where would I start? I would probably encourage people first, just to start to reflect and say, what are my own attachments to money? What does that look like? What are the emotions that I carry around money? Do I largely look at money as something that's icky, as something that's dirty? Do I look at it as something that's just this tool to do amazing work in the world? What do I look at it as? Do I look at it as something that brings constant tension and pain in people's lives? There's a lot of ways people could fill in those blanks. I would probably start there. What are your own emotions that you have around money? And then my favorite question to ask, I ask this to all new clients, is describe your relationship with money using 3 words or 3 phrases. How would you describe your relationship with money? And then you can very easily kind of back into the emotions that go into each one of those. But that's going to, just right off the bat, that's going to give you a lot of fertile ground to do some work if you can just answer that one question.
Wow. No, those are great. See my experience. So I was one of those fundraising missionaries for the first part of my career for about 8 years. And I got into horrible debt as a result, just trying to live on minimum wage while having a stay-at-home wife and having a child and a mortgage and all those things. It's amazing I was able even to get into a mortgage. Um, but but it was a really traumatic experience for me. And when I think about where I was coming from personally, I grew up in a home that, we were very poor. I was one of those kids that got free lunches at school and all that sort of thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so as someone who was raising money for missionary support, like the most I could ever dream of asking for someone was like $100 a month.
Mhm.
And I ended up having, I transitioned from that, into a major gift role at a university. And it was just this psychological shock of going from feeling like $100 a month was just this unattainable amount that seemed like, a lot of money to me, to all of a sudden I'm asking people for $25,000,
Mhm.
in one shot. And boy, that was hard. That was a really, really hard transition to make. And I find, that for fundraisers, you can go to schools, you can go training, you can do all the things, but you almost need to force yourself into those uncomfortable spaces to get past it. Do you find that holds true generally with things relating to financial counseling?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I especially, I had, you're talking about money scripts essentially, and we all
Hmm.
get these, and most of them, psychologists have shown most people get their thoughts and opinions about money as early as age 7. So
Wow.
at age 7, you could have already had this idea of like $100 is like an impossibly large amount of money, right? That seems like a huge deal. And especially with how you grew up, that would have been like a huge amount of money, right? I grew up, I grew up a very standard middle class home, but both of my parents, and this is the interesting thing about money scripts, they don't always come from you directly, but they can come from mom or dad. Both of my parents grew up
Mm.
incredibly poor, to the point where I was in high school before I realized that not everyone's grandpa and grandma live in trailer parks. I
Hmm.
kind of had this assumption until I was probably 16, like, oh, I guess when you get old, you just move into a trailer home. Like, that's what everyone does. And it wasn't until I was a little bit older and started going to my friends' grandparents' houses where I'm like, wait a minute, this is just a regular house. Like, I thought that they're not following the same script, the plan that I have in my head. And so I grew up with parents who grew up very, very poor. And so they had certain money scripts that they passed on to me that when I started working with people, especially people with significant wealth, I had to do a lot of work on myself so that I could, in a healthy way, serve this audience because I knew I carried some things, just some misguided, assumptions and different narratives that weren't healthy and weren't necessarily based on truth, but maybe were based on someone else's experiences in life. So I
Yeah.
do think it's really important for people to do that, like deeper heart work, because we all carry something, right? It's not if we carry something, it's like we all carry something. Now, are we willing to kind of do the heart work to just reconcile it?
Boy, that's great advice.
Hmm.
Uh, is there anything else? I know we're coming to the end of our time together. Anything else that you'd like to share with maybe an executive director who's just trying to get his head or her head around how do I relate to wealthy people? I'm not a wealthy person. It's not my background maybe as a fundraiser. How do I relate to this person if I feel really like an other in that setting?
Hmm. Yeah, I would. First, I kind of go back to what we were just talking about. I would challenge yourself to say, is there some hard work that needs to be done? Because I would say that most people, if you ask them just point blank, hey, do you think that your net worth equals your self worth? Most people would say no. I think a few people might write out flat out, just like, yeah, I do think there's some truth into that. And I'm not saying one is right or wrong. However, most people will deny that. But when I walk into a room and I can automatically pick up on the fact that I probably have the lowest net worth in the room, I might be automatically elevating them and lowering myself. And I'm coming from this place of now I'm trying to earn your approval, or now I'm trying to um, prove that I deserve to be here, or prove that you need to listen to me, or that I have a message that you should share, right? And so we're not coming from the best place in those moments. So I would potentially I would potentially shift the question instead of saying, how can I better relate to a donor? I don't think you necessarily need to relate. I would say, what do they need and how can I serve them better than anybody else? Meaning, how can I show up and be someone willing to challenge them? What needs to be true about me? What work do I need to do in my own heart? What needs to be true for me to be able to ask really uncomfortable questions sometimes that's going to serve that person really, really deeply? How can I show them love and just how can I be someone they can trust no matter what? So I don't think it's a matter of relating. I can think of people in my life who cross all of those boxes for me, and we couldn't be more different. We couldn't be more different. And so I would just simply change the question around, don't put the light on ourselves, but let's put the light on someone else and just simply say, what do they need and how can I serve them really deeply?
That's really great advice. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for being on the show today. Everybody could benefit from these types of conversations, whether they're wealthy people or fundraisers, or maybe they're wealthy fundraisers out there too.
That's
Uh,
right.
if someone needed service from you, or if they were looking for a financial counselor, how would they get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So you're welcome to reach out to me directly from my email. It's Courtney at financialdiscipleship.center. And we do have a lot of training events and different workshops and things that we do. So you're also just welcome to sign up for our email list at financialdiscipleship.center. And you can get in touch with all kinds of different resources that we have for people. And, most of them will be geared directly towards how do we engage people in a heart conversation around money.
That's wonderful. Well, I'll be sure to share that email address
Perfect.
on the notes for this as well. Thank you so much again for being with us today. We've loved having you. Boy, I just wish you the best in the work you're doing. It's so valuable.
Thank you. I could say the same thing to you, friend. So thank you for having me. Thank you for all the work that you're doing and serving people. So I appreciate you. And thank you, listeners, for joining in.
Hey, you're so welcome. Thanks for joining me and Courtney for this powerful series. If today's episode helped you think differently about your role as a fundraiser, I hope you'll share it with a colleague. And remember, fundraising isn't just about gifts. It's about relationship, vision, connection, and purpose. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together towards major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.